Have you ever said the following? I swear this will never, ever, ever happen again. And here we are, a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later, 15 years later, 20 years later, and it's happening again. If you've ever found yourself saying, this will never happen, this is the last time I'll ever fall for this, if you've ever used language like that and it's happening again, you're in for a treat. Because today we're going to be talking about what is going on with these crazy patterns in our life. I know that for myself and Robert, we had this pattern that every so often we'd lose all our money. And it's like, okay, we got to figure this out. If this sounds like you, then today's your lucky day, because we're going to be talking with Dr. Michelle LaMasa-Dawson, and she is a mind-body medicine expert. She is recall healing expert. You just look under the healing modality, she's an expert. And I'm really excited because today we're going to be talking about how to identify these patterns and do something about it. Hi, my name is Lily McDermott, and I am the host of the Lily and McDermott radio show, Classroom. And since if this is the first time that you have come onto the Classroom, please know I've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide natural ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friend, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, the last time I had a conversation with Dr. Michelle, it was just, I didn't want it to end. I didn't want it to end. And she is here because she's back to, we can finish this conversation that is going to be longer, longer, and longer. We're going to keep talking about it through the year. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that Dr. Michelle LaMasa-Dawson is here to do just that. Welcome back, Dr. Michelle. How are you?
Thank you so much. And I'm sorry I pushed the button just a little bit too soon. Please
Oh,
forgive me.
no, nobody noticed.
I was so excited.
I'm excited that you're in. I was going to stop everything. Yeah. So don't worry. It's been edited. So here we go. Let's talk about these patterns and how recall healing, or the research that you've done, the studying that you've done, can help somebody that has patterns of repetition.
Oh my goodness. This is recall healing in a nutshell. It's all about patterns. And I tell people that our universe is mathematically equated, that there are scientific equations virtually for everything. Well, our life is no different than that. And if you have trauma at a certain age, we all have trauma, and this can be just simply the stress of the daily life. Dad loses his job and you're 2 years old. And then at 4 and 6 and 8 and all the way through the person's life, there are these stories that reflect this same event. Maybe not dad losing his job, but the ramifications of that, or dad losing his job, or that person losing their job. It's real, imaginary, symbolic, and virtual. And so it's the feeling that leads the way, imprints, and repeats.
Okay, so um, can you repeat that again? Real, imaginary?
Symbolic and virtual.
Okay, let's take that a snapshot, because it is real, but some of it could be a symbolism of what's happened in the past, or explain how that works.
Sure. So let's take death, for example. Let's say that you have somebody from the family that dies when you're a baby, and mom and dad are super hurt by that. And it's very challenging. And, let's use two again as that example. And you're just a little one. But the feeling kind of is the imprint.
Okay.
And so then in When you leave your home to become independent, including food, shelter, and clothing, this is a pattern that sets up that your brain says everything that happened from zero to when you became independent repeats. So let's say you're 20 years old when that happens. Okay. And so 0 to 20 years old, everything, the good, the bad, and the indifferent is going to repeat. We're talking about these patterns, right? And so then the next pattern, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, everything that happened in that first row is going to happen in the second row. So let's come back to that death. Somebody died there. So then you find yourself 22 years old and you get fired from a job. Same kind of experience. Symbolically, it's about death. The feeling is the similar experience, like, like that. Okay.
Mhm.
And then in the next cycle over, where you're 42, okay, then you experience a divorce. Okay. And so that is what I mean by it can be another death, a literal death, death,
Mhm.
death, death. It can be a symbolic death. I had this experience, then I got fired, then I lost a friendship, then I went through a divorce, then so there's that. And when we say virtual, so when you're watching a movie, you can have those same feelings. And for the brain, the other doesn't exist. So no matter what I see my friend or somebody experiencing, the closer they are and the more I feel and love them, the more it's like I'm experiencing it myself. So for that, in that virtual.
Interesting.
And so when we look at that, we look at all of the different aspects of what it could be related to. And normally it's not so clear. It's very ambiguous. And so it's ambiguous, ambiguous, ambiguous until it's obvious. And it's like, oh my gosh, how did I never see that before? And then it just becomes so clear. The awareness leads the way. When you become aware, then it can stop the pattern from showing up again and again.
So you have two frames of people, there's two kinds of people. One that say, here we go again, and the other one that says, no, we're going to prevent it. So it's just like when you have the BRCA test. Some people will say, oh, well, I have the BRCA gene, so I'm going to remove every part of my body that I can remove. But really, the way to use that test, that DNA test, would be to say, do I have a predisposition? Let me do whatever I can to minimize that predisposition and use this information for the greater good. Now, you have that, those are two choices, the two directions that we can go in. So when somebody is looking for patterns and they're unaware, sometimes I hear people say, I knew this would happen, or it happens every so often, or this is happening again. Like, for example, Robert and I remember saying this distinctly to Robert the last time for the housing crisis. I said to Robert, this keeps happening. 911 happened. And you know how a lot of people lost their money. Then something else happened, and then something else happened. And I said, there's a pattern here. And I didn't know you back then, but I knew enough that there was a pattern. And I said, this will never, ever happen again. This is something that will never happen. So how can you, what are some of the things that we can do, steps that we can take, that we can start looking and sweeping, I left at 20, or, I forget, I was like right before I got married in October in 2085, 1985, sorry, 1985, I left my home. And so, and I remember growing up, my dad's favorite thing to do was to put his hands in his pockets, and when we'd ask for something, he'd pull out the empty pockets, and he'd go, there's nothing in here. And so I don't know if that created a belief that there was lack in my life, and then that pattern ensued. But let's talk about, how do you look for it? What do you need to do? And once you discover it, how can you use it for the greater good?
So there was a lot there, Lily. So
I
let me
know.
see how I can come back a little bit. But
Yeah.
so There is the global thing. So that is interesting and it's challenging because it's on that global level. And
Hmm.
so working in our so we work that personal cycle. So we do a timeline. Okay. And so when somebody says, here we go again, my question is, when did it first happen? When did this, did this happen for your ancestors, even using the broca gene? So there's that, like I said, there's so much there to unpack, but that is important because we begin to have a deeper understanding. If let's say like we have a gene for something, it doesn't get turned on automatically. It's the body's response to understand that something has happened in the genealogy and that we, as a memory, a cellular memory of that, the body carries that gene. If a person were to get into a similar circumstance, for instance, like related to the nest, since that's what we're looking at with that BRCA gene with the breast cancer, that if a person were to get into something related to the nest and feeling separated or having something inconceivable, then the brain would say, oh, my ancestors used this to help them, so we're going to turn this switch on to help this individual. Okay. The other example that you used is this the whole money thing, and so the fact that you would use that memory from your dad tells me there is something there, and I trust your intuition because you just gave me a nugget, a golden nugget to work with, because that says that this comes from dad, which means that it probably comes from above. And is there, what are the other patterns? Was there ancestors that lost their money? Were there ancestors that got their money illegally? And so then in the family tree, there's this feeling of, well, we're not worthy of having money, so we got to get rid of all of the money.
Hmm.
That secret belief kind of thing kind of leads the way. So it could be any number of things. And please don't think that I'm using that like, oh, I don't think that anything
No,
happened
no,
in
no,
your
no.
family,
But
but
it's
it's something
funny.
to consider.
Yeah, exactly. Not everything that we look at is, relatable, but
No.
that when I think of when I think of my asking for anything. Now, when my dad was around, we knew when to ask my dad for things, because if he was talking to a neighbor and the ice cream truck went by and we would go, my dad at that moment, he always found money. I have no idea where there was always money at that moment. So we were very smart kids. We
Yes.
knew when to approach my dad. And and so it was amazing. And not only were there's enough for us, there were enough for the neighbors, and he would pay for everybody. So, but when we were with my dad and my dad was by himself, now we were 5 kids. So and my dad is a self-made man. So he made the most out of the money that he made. And so he did a great job. He's a great steward. But that memory came to me because of, we were talking about patterns. And
Yeah.
I don't even know, but I think it's random. But is it random?
Yeah,
Is it
I'm like,
random?
is never random. And in my world, when people will say it's out of the blue, it's a coincidence. No, it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
It's never by coincidence. It may not have happened to us that we're aware of, but once you start to dissect that timeline, the other experiences, that's when it can kind of come into the awareness. When we look at the family tree, when we look at what we call that project purpose, the 18 months before we're born, the birth, and the whole first year of life, this all goes into what we carry out. And so if something happened that was related to money, when you were an infant, when you were in utero, right before you were born, then that's going to play an even greater role. in your life because you're not aware of it. So what we're not aware of can be even more more of a permanent download to that shows up in our life until we bring that into the awareness and clear the path.
Interesting. So with me, if I were to calculate correctly, I was 21.5. So I was born in May and I left the home in October. So that would be May, June, July, August, September, October. So that would be 21 years old, 0.5,
Right.
right?
Okay. So
So,
the next cycle over is what we do is we would draw like a vertical line
mhm,
and 0 would be at the top and 21.5 would be at the bottom.
mhm,
And it is very detailed, and that's why we do pay attention to the months, because 5 months and 5 months is literally over a year. So you're getting the, that 5 is 10 months further. So because we have 21.5 plus 21 and 5, it makes you almost 43 years old.
mhm,
So that is, that's going to make a difference between, just 42 and 43 years old. So
mhm.
at the top of the next vertical line, we do it parallel to that first line. At the top is 21 and 5. At the bottom, you do 21 and 5 plus 21 and 5. So that gives you 42 and 10 months.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you do it again, 42 and 10 at the top of the next row. And 21 and 5 is um, 3
At
and
15.
3.
Okay, so now we're going into the following. So it'd be 21 and 5 would be 15, 3, 53, 15. So it'd be
60.
54,
So it'd be 60. So 42 and 10
63,
months plus 21 and 5 months. So you'll get 63 and 3 months.
3 months, yes.
Okay. And you're not 63 years old. You're not there yet.
Not even close.
Right. So we're gonna then just put right next to that last line plus 200 because we don't want your brain to say, "Oh my gosh, my life is ending at 63 and 3." No, your life is going to go on till 200 so we can give you a long happy life. So
Mhm,
anytime I do somebody's timeline, I always add that plus 200 so
mhm,
that we can keep going and the brain doesn't see any specific thing as my ending. And so that's how. And then we look for the patterns. So how old are you when, like you lose money for the first time? How old were you at half your age? So there's an infinite number of patterns that can show up. And it's our job, this is where Gilbert says we are like Sherlock Holmes. We are looking for the puzzle pieces because we're looking for the bigger picture to put the puzzle pieces together to understand where is the root. And the reason why we do that is because when we find the root and we bring it into the awareness, we give ourselves and our family an opportunity to break that pattern and for it to stop showing up. We don't care when the good repeats. We don't even really pay attention to it, but everything repeats over and over. I remember I was 42 and I was taking I was in grad school
mhm.
and we were at like in a little, I was at the Center for Mind Body Medicine and it was almost like a retreat and we were in these groups and we're sharing and I was just feeling just like so connected and on top of the world. And I had already known recall healing for a few years I hear, Gilbert's voice frequently, and I hear, the good repeats also. And so I remember 30 years before that, 12 years old, my parents are third order Salesians working with the Catholic Church, very committed to the youth. And I was in retreat doing the same thing. I was a team leader. We were sharing, we were having this
Wow.
great experience. And so it was such a validation to understand really that the good does repeat as well. It's just that we pay more attention to the bad and the challenging because we don't want it to show up and it is painful and it is hard. And I also hear, Lily, that so many people will say, when they go through, because I have people put their traumas, the things that were challenging. Oh, I've already worked on that. I'm done with that. Well, that may be true, but then they reach a certain point in their life and something kind of shows up that is similar to that.
Mhm.
Well, I would say it's not that you didn't do the work. It means that there's more to it. There's nuances to consider, and it's like reading a book.
Yeah.
If you read a book one year, a couple years later, that book is going to have a very different meaning. And
Mhm.
so when you go to work, and that's why I say, let's go to work, let's see what else we can find out so that the next time around it doesn't have to show up and you really can break those patterns. But anything that has feeling, so when you're thinking about memories of what you've experienced in your life, and there's still feelings, whether it's fresh, whether it's anger, hurt, frustration, whatever it may be, if it's there and you can access it, that tells us there's probably a percentage in our body that we still carry.
This is interesting because, all of us experience these moments in our life where we say never again, never again. One of them was with my divorce. And I found myself, the next relationship that I found myself in, I felt that getting out of that relationship would have been harder than getting out of the divorce. And it was like, how did this happen? And once you realize, oh my gosh, this person was controlling and manipulating, and I found myself in a relationship without even knowing it was a relationship. And so the way that it was positioned, he positioned himself, I could stand to lose more financially by walking away from this person. And it was because he was indirectly connected to my work.
Oh,
So I put myself in a situation, and again, I said, never again. And so we all have these moments. I know I'm not the only one. And
oh,
so I want to see, does anybody relate to this? Write down what your moment was. Write it down in the comment section. Let me know if you can relate, if this is something that is striking a bell for you. So we take the from zero to when we became independent from our parents, correct?
including food, shelter, and clothing.
Okay. Yeah, because going off to college
I
is
think,
still not independent.
right. However, if a person is given up for adoption or they are abandoned by their parents, not just one, but both parents, and they're no longer raised by their parents, that would be their cycle of autonomy. That's what we call it.
Hmm.
So if a person is given up for adoption at 1 day old, that means that every single day of their life, they will experience some form of feeling of abandoned until they realize that that's where it came from.
Hmm.
And so when I do a person's timeline that way, I don't use the 1 day because it's pretty impossible if a person is, in their 70s to do every day, for
Or
70 years.
one day, if they were like 1 day old when they were given up for
Right.
adoption.
That
Got it. Okay. I thought maybe one
okay.
year. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, 1 day old, or 1 year. I had one woman who had a breast cancer, and we were working together, and her parents were taken away in the Chinese Cultural Revolution when she was 6 years old.
Hmm.
And so when we do 0 to 6 years old, 6 years old to 12 years old, every single year. So the 6 years old, she's taken away from her parents. At 12 years old, she's given back to her parents, but now she's been reprogrammed and she can't stand her parents because culturally it was not acceptable for them to be in the arts. At 18 years old, her parents go away and she's sent off so a bit again pushed out. And it was literally all through. At 42, she gets married, her husband leaves her. So it's the same feeling of inconceivable, separation. That is the conflict around the breast. And so that it was all clear. When she could name it, claim all those spaces, realizing where it came from, the breast healed.
Wow. Okay. So you go from, for me, it would be 0 to 21.5.
Correct.
And then do I go from write down any event that I remember for
Yes.
every year of my life? How does that work?
Yeah, so I would say focus on the traumatic events. So, the good matters, of course, but the bigger, more, traumatic events. And then you look for patterns for that. So if you can think of something, Lily, about what happened in that first cycle, anything come to mind that was kind of challenging or scary or hurt you
I would
or
say that for me, it was my senior year in high school. My parents moved the middle of my senior year. They made a commitment to me, and they said that if they sold their house, that I could stay. Well, when they put the house on the market, the first thing I did is I went to my best friend's mom, and I had my own income that I was making. So I went to her and I negotiated how much I would pay her, and the house sold the same day. So I already had a plan. I was barely 18, barely 17, 18. So no, so 63, and I graduated in 81. So it was that time frame, and it was maybe at the beginning of the year, January. So it was still, well, actually, no, it would have been, we moved. I can't remember exactly when we moved, but I do know that the school year had begun. So it must have been, school year begins what, in May, August,
in
around that time frame.
August or September. Yeah.
So it must have been September, October, when my parents told me that they were going to put the house on the market and move from Gulf Breeze to Winter Park, which is where we ended up going. And it was a new school system. It wasn't even Lake Brantley, where we went to school when I was a freshman. And so that was traumatic for me. And I was very angry because after I had scheduled everything, everything was ready. I went to my parents. I said, that's okay. I'm gonna live with my friend Caroline, and her mom said I could live there. And my parents looked at me like I had three heads, like, there is no way
I
we're
mean,
gonna let you stay here, Lily.
mhm.
And I was upset,
Yes.
very
So
upset.
think of an emotion. So if you close your eyes and you think of the emotion connected with that experience,
Mhm.
what comes to mind?
Lied to, violated,
Okay. So,
violated.
okay. So now are you 17 when you start your senior year, or are you 18? How old are you?
I'm 17 when I started my senior
Okay,
year.
so you turned 18 in May,
In
is that
May.
correct? Okay, so you're 17 and let's see, June, July, August, like 17 and 3 months
Yeah.
around, give or take.
Mhm.
So you can double your age and say, how did you feel lied to and violated when you were 34 and 6 months?
Mm.
Okay. Or, 21 and 5 plus 17 and 3 months. What does it line up with there?
Yeah.
And you'll begin to and ask yourself, because sometimes when it's very painful, the brain will say, I don't remember. So if you begin to say, if I did remember, what would it be? Then you'll have a memory that comes up, or you might have a dream, or you'll hear a family member talk about an old event, and all of a sudden you're reminded of that. So
Mhm.
that's how you keep going with it. And
Mhm.
especially because even when you said it about the move, you could feel that there's still a little bit of energy about it. Maybe
Mm.
you've done a lot of work mostly around
Yeah.
it,
Oh,
so it's
yeah.
not there anymore.
Yeah.
But maybe at 34 there was, and then double your age then, or
Yeah.
17. And so does anything else come to mind when you think about those ages?
At 34,
Hmm.
because let me say, um, I graduated in 81. I want to make sure I wasn't 18 when I started. So in 1963, so in 1981, I would be, let me see, 18 when I graduated in 1981. So in
Okay.
63,
So,
I graduated at 18.
so you
Yes,
just turned 18
I
when,
just turned 18
okay, so perfect. So,
when
but
I graduated. So I
when
just
you,
want to make sure I'm
yeah,
as
so
accurate
you
as I
were
possibly can.
yep. So you were 17 and around 3 or 4 months
Yeah,
when mom and dad sell, and then you have to go to a new school, which
yeah.
is super
And I
traumatic.
got so sick. I ended up getting mono. And it's interesting that that we would make this connection. At that time, it was like 18, I wasn't 18 yet. But I remember getting mono, and anytime if moving forward, Epstein-Barr is in my body because of mono.
Mhm.
And so whenever there's a stressful situation, it could trigger Epstein-Barr.
Wow, that's super interesting. So a couple things about that is that the mono is I don't I don't feel like I have anyone that I can talk to. I
Correct. I mean, I was
feel
all alone.
I
Yeah.
feel alone. I don't feel, like I'm part of things. I don't want to share how. And then Epstein-Barr also is the devaluation and, not feeling connected and feeling separated. And so it's what follows, that,
Mhm.
and when we don't resolve entirely, then it can kind of stick around. Or if the brain has used it once, it can use it again to
Interesting.
get you through another situation. And typically, you don't get sick until after the stress.
Mhm.
So the stress is first, and then when you finally kind of resolve your stress, that's probably when the mono showed up.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I had moved in, I was in Winter Park already, and I went from a school of 1,000 students, 250 seniors, to 1,000 seniors, 3,000 students. So I got lost in it. But you know what? There are blessings that came out of it too. You know, although I loved Gulf Breeze and I loved my friends, life continues and life gets reinventions and all
Oh,
those things. So there was some beauty that came out of it too, but it was a hard lesson as an 18-year-old. It
mm,
taught me that I needed to be flexible. It taught me that I needed to continue living at that age. And I think that when I look at a challenge, that is probably where I draw the most energy from.
wow. And so it taught you perseverance. And so there were so many amazing things that come from
Came
that.
out of it
And
too.
it's really true. In our work, we know that that is true, that so many things, and we learn and we grow, and that's all wonderful. It's the part that wasn't so wonderful that imprints and repeats.
Yeah.
So we want to name those places and how we felt, how we hurt about them, name it, claim it so that we can dump it and really focus on that positive aspect of what you did get from that, and but also that it was sad and you didn't feel honored by your parents and you felt lied to. And so
Mhm.
that's the part that is really more of the imprint and that would repeat over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back and just giving it a little bit of energy. And sometimes people will tell me, well, that's in the past. And I don't really bring up that it was in the past. Well, that's great, but it always shows up in the present if you don't deal with that past.
Okay, so let me take a little break here because I do want to name it, claim it, and dump it. I want to go through that process. And so, real quick, I just want to encourage all of you to go to whenyounneedafriend.com. And there's a lot of things going on. As you know, this is my last week that we are doing our premier classes. And I'm going to be taking a 2-week break, maybe even longer. I don't know. Sometimes I say I think I'm going to be taking a much longer break, but we've got coming up February 3rd, 2024. We have I Am the Solution Natural Health Summit. I'm excited about that. We have Dr. Bradley Nelson might be coming to this. We have Dr. Thomas Levy. We also have our headliner is Dr. Joel Furman, who's going to be zoomed in, and we will have access interaction with him during the his talk as well. And so we're going to be learning and growing together. We're going to, and I think that that's coming back to what I've been talking about with Michelle. I think that that is why I am so passionate about what I do, is because I did not like how I felt. And I just needed to get out of it. How do you get out of it? If in whatever's going on in your life, you get to go through it by figuring out what you do want. And so February 3rd is going to be an opportunity for all of us, not only to engage with our speakers, but also our vendors that will teach us how we can live a natural life and be healthy. So go to whenyouneedafriend.com. When you go there, there's going to be a pop-up, and at the pop-up, just click on the pop-up and get your tickets. If you get your tickets before December 31st, you get $24 off. So check that out. While you're there, please subscribe to my website, like and follow me on all social media. Share this video with everybody that you know. If you have enough shares, enough likes, enough emojis, the algorithms cannot touch us. So help us be part of this growth process that I long for and that I look forward to every day of my life. And so while you're there, please check out my sponsors, support my sponsors the way that they're supporting the classroom. Go to my Shop Now bag. There's some things going on in there that are well, everything is healthy from head to toe, natural. Some of them are affiliates that help grow the classroom, and others are not. So please check out everything that you would be interested in 2024 to grow and be as healthy as you possibly can. We are also giving away, in honor of Dr. Lorraine Day, we're giving away one of the DVDs that we did together. This is the 100 Lessons from the Exodus. All you have to do is text me at 407-373-5959, or you can email me at lily@whenyouneedafriend.com. Let me know that you want your name in the winner's basket, but you need to share your name, please. Let me know what you want. And so on December 21st, I will pick one name. I will draw it from the winner's basket, and I will let you know if you're the winner. If you are living out of the state of the United States and you still would like the DVD, all you have to do is pay for your shipping, or we can give you the online version of the 100 Lessons from the Exodus. We also have the DVD for the Book of Revelation as well. We have scholarship. We had a very generous donor. They want to give $50 for off for DVD, and $25 off for if you want the any of the online version of the New Truth series with Dr. Lorraine Day. So just let me know that you would like to be a part of the scholarship. Once the money is gone, it's gone. So also, I want you to know that you can become an enrolled student in the classroom, whether it's $1 or $1,000 a month, or a one-time donation. And I want to talk to all of you who've been donating $1. Thank you. If that's what you can give, thank you. Every bit of a penny, everything all works together for the greater good. So thank you so much for your donation. I am sincerely grateful for anything that you can donate. If you're looking to tithe for the year, please consider giving to the classroom, because we really do appreciate it. Today we have Dr. Michelle LaMasa-Dawson, and we are grateful that she is with us to talk about this, because sometimes we think these things happen randomly, but no, there are patterns in our life that we just need to identify them and claim them. So you can go to soultreetransformations.com, and you are able to learn more about what's going on with Dr. Michelle. So do you have any events coming up anytime soon that people would like to learn more about recall healing?
I do. I have a workshop coming up on January 11th and 12th. It's a level 2, but it's no problem. You can take the workshops out of sequence. It's part of the foundation, and so I cover all of the basics, and then it's really what we address. So there's different ailments, and we cover the structure, ears, nose, and throat, digestion, and the bones, and we talk a little bit about different ailments like Parkinson's and diabetes and things that like that on level 2. And then I have an intro workshop coming up in March. It's a 1-day workshop and both are online. And so it's a way to kind of jump in and learn. And I do a timeline, I do a family tree. We talk about the basics, and I teach about letting go tools of how to help people when they have that, to name it, claim how they're feeling so that they can dump it and move on.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So let's talk about that. So we talked about putting 0 to the year you become independent, including what about if a father abandons a child? Let's say one child is abandoned at the age of 5, the other one is abandoned at the age of 8. So does that affect each child differently?
Sure, of course. And, we say that we're part of the same family, but really we're not part of the same family. Yes, in this umbrella, but everybody has their own experiences of what it means to be in that family. And everybody's coming into a different environment and a different way of being. And mom and dad can shift and change. And so it wouldn't be the cycle of autonomy if dad
Okay.
leaves or mom leaves, but of course, that's abandonment. So it's still going to be an imprint and it's still going to be a trauma for the person. And so if dad leaves at 5 for one person, then at 10 and 15 and 20 and all the way through that person's life, we have to ask, how did you feel abandoned? Was there somebody that left you? Did you have broken relationships during that time? And then the person that was 8 years old, we would say 8, 16, 24, and so forth, for the same kinds of experiences. And how did that person experience it? So two people can experience the same event, but because of the background, the culture, how we're raised, where we're raised, we each deal with things differently from our own perspective and filters. And so what may be a huge deal for some people may not be so much of a big deal for another person.
Interesting. So it all depends on their perspective as well. So
Mhm.
they start with, so even though that feeling of abandonment happened at that age, there's still independence happens when they leave the home because this one parent is still there.
Right, correct. That okay. But if mom and dad were to die in a car accident or something like that, and they have to live with grandma and grandpa, or God forbid, go into foster care, that is their cycle of autonomy. Because in nature, when mom and dad aren't there, the baby can die, the child can die. And so that puts the brain on guard to make sure that whatever is happening in the environment, that they're going to be able to be safe and protected.
Okay. So they go through that first column and figure out what are some of the traumatic issues that happened at that time. And then do they try to see if do they go to the next column and the next column and see
Mhm.
where there's some traumatic and then notice the patterns?
Absolutely. So you can first do it. I mean, it doesn't matter how you do it, you're usually going to find something. So you can do 5, 10, 15, 20, or you can go to the next cycle over. And like you had said, I was 21 and 5 plus 5 years old would be 26 years old. What happened there? Okay. And then, 42 and 10 plus 5 years old, what happened there? All the way through. And if you don't know, or if it doesn't come into your memory, keep going with it. But if sometimes that there's something there, and it resonates, but you're not exactly sure what it is, don't worry, it will come to you when it's supposed to come. And so many times as I've worked, like for instance, when I was first working on eliminating weight. And Gilbert asked me, hey, how do you feel about the water? Oh, I love the water so much and it's so great. Oh, well, did you have any drowning experiences? No, I never had any drowning experiences, but something told me to stay with it. And so I started saying, because one of the reasons why we can carry extra weight is because the body is more buoyant when there has been, a drowning in the past. And so
Wow.
I keep extra weight in order to not drown. But the brain is like that. It works like that. And so I just sat with it a month after I started, like, what is that? Is there anything? I remembered a kid in our church community that had drowned. It was very traumatic. And for the brain, the other person doesn't exist. And especially when it's traumatic for the family, for the community, it can be really downloaded into ourselves.
Hmm.
And then I started recalling about being a kid, going swimming at friend's house. My mom would always ask, well, are their parents home? Yeah, they're home, but they never watched us. So my best friend's brother would hold us into the water.
Oh
We,
no.
we would be so afraid, but we wanted to go swimming, and that was the most important thing at the time. And so, of course, their parents were home, but that I didn't know if I was going to come up a couple of times, or being at the beach and getting caught up in the waves. And then it was a year after I started doing that. And if I knew what it was, what would it be? I remembered so many stories. My son almost drowning in the Colorado River, falling off a dock. But a year after I started that work, I remembered that my brother in Arizona, same as my son, had fallen in between the dock and the boat. My dad had to go down and try to get him out. My mom
Oh,
was freaking out. It was so, and then maybe 4 years after I was doing this work, my mom tells me a story about my father going off the in a car. He and a group of guys were in a car during my project Purpose, and they went into the Colorado River. One guy drowned. My father had a concussion, hurt his elbow, the whole community
wow.
so angry with him. That night, I eliminated 10 pounds because my brain was keeping that on if that were ever to happen. I had no idea, no awareness, but my brother almost drowned in the Colorado River. My son almost drowned in the Colorado River. And here's the story in the background of my father. It's
Wow.
crazy, and then I still get surprised sometimes because it seems like, oh my gosh, it seems out of the blue or random, but it isn't when you look at the whole picture.
So now we're looking at patterns across the columns. Now what do? You identify it, you think about it, you kind of like start making connections, or just does it happen organically?
Well, like you can be very specific and do the work intentionally, or if something comes up in this moment of your life and it feels random or out of the blue, then you pay attention, like, okay, wait a minute. How old am I right now? What happened at half my age? What happened at my half my age? The goal is to go to all the places, get to the root of where it first began. And usually that's our ancestors. But even if you don't know about your ancestors, it doesn't matter, because if it shows up in your life, that means that the ancestors experienced it.
Mm.
And so we do, we've talked many times about our letting go exercises that are simple tools, but help us to process it. It's really about honoring the way that we felt in the moment, giving ourselves the validation, the love that we needed at the moment that maybe we didn't get, so that we can breathe into it and release it from our body. So many times we're not validated. Oh, you shouldn't feel that way, or
Yeah.
oh, this, or oh, look at the bright side. You're going to get to know so many other people. Well, yes, that may be true, but I have hurt over here. And you lied to me. You didn't honor me. And so it would have been, and our parents, they're doing the best they can with
Of
the
course,
resources that they
yes.
have. So I'm not putting down parents, but they're less than perfect, because we all are. And so when they have made mistakes, especially back in the day, and then, when we're born in the 60s, that, they weren't encouraged to say, "Oh, Lily, I'm so sorry for what I did." We are very different parents, we've had to go through that. But now
Yeah.
we go back to our kids because it honors their experience
Mhm.
and it doesn't devalue them for what they experienced. It may not be how we experienced it, but their perception can be quite different. Our perception can be quite different. Your parents, in their wisdom, they knew it was the best move for your family. But at 8, 17, 18 years old, that's the world is ending. You
Yeah.
cannot move during my senior year.
No, not my
What
senior
are you
year.
doing? And so it's like, oh, so that can repeat over and over in your life of the same kind of feeling stabbed or jabbed or devalued. So when you get to all of that and you just really honor yourself and name those places, then and breathe into it, it's like, oh, wow, I was a little girl that really was, hurt by these circumstances. And now that can be done and over, and I can move on from that.
Very good. So that's the letting go part. That's the dumping part, that you identify it. This happened to me as a child. I am no longer this person. I've learned from this. I mean, what are some of other ways that we can dump?
So honestly, it's that simple of just like we use the emotional freedom technique. You can
Mhm.
tap, you butterfly hug, or you're literally naming what it is. You're claiming how you felt, you're breathing into it, you're validating, and then you let it go. And so if it still comes up, then you're not done with it. Then you can sing about it. We have different tools, the Ho'oponopono, my heart is full of love and understanding, the small property, the emotional free release technique where you yell and scream and you get everything that you wanted to get out at the time, but you couldn't because, as a little girl and a young woman, you're not allowed to talk back to your parents and be disrespectful, but they also don't allow you to say how you really feel. And it is important. And so you do all of that. And then you work to the pace of mom and dad were really doing the best they could, and they were wounded too. Then it gives you the opportunity to move on. And so if things come up and you still have that feeling, it means that you're still carrying it. So even, the emotion code is a great thing that you could do, or when you understand that you have beliefs. And I know that there is belief code, but I've been doing the belief work and for a long time as you have,
Yes,
So
yes. Yeah.
that bottom line of, do I have a secret belief that I'm no good, or that this should repeat, or I'm not worthy, so that we can honor, wow. And I use Byron Katie's work, the four agreement or the four questions of, is that true? Is that absolutely true? What happens when I believe that thought? And where would I be without that thought? And then we do the campfire process, which is from the journey, the Brandon Bay's work. And so little tools that are just, and so everybody has their own little tools, affirmations and prayers and songs, but it's really in the naming of all those places, claiming how you felt so that it can stop showing up or a different pattern can show up. And so maybe next time around, it's not going to be so severe,
Yeah.
or maybe it doesn't happen at all,
It
which
doesn't
is
happen.
always,
That's
so
right.
that is the goal.
Yeah, because I can say to myself, wow, I learned such a great lesson. I don't, now I can learn other lessons. Now I
Yeah,
can move on. I can let it
yeah,
go because I mastered that one.
right,
So
right.
this is great. So you dump and let go, and it doesn't have to be this incredible process. It could just be, an acknowledgement, so that that the next column that's coming up, you're more than able to say, "Hey, I am going to create something different and new for this column. It's going to be exciting." And can you program yourself into being successful at that point?
Of course, and the key is to really pay attention. And I mean, life is a journey, so there are going to be certain things that show up that you thought that you were done, and then they just show back up, and it's like, oh man, I thought I was done with that. But then you realize, for instance, this whole year, 2023, has been a very challenging year. it's, so many things have come up, even though I thought that I was done with many things. But this year has really been a reminder of when I was 23 years old. And so 2023, that symbolism. So that is what happens. And so it's just so amazing. But just naming that and revisiting it and claiming it has allowed me to move beyond many things and to let go of more things that I thought I was already done with.
That's awesome. You know what? I am going to schedule some time to go up and move in with you so that we can go through every single column of my life. But
Yay,
hey,
come on, let's
we're gonna
do
have to
it.
do that. This has been great. And can you imagine? Time has just flown. 55 minutes have just flown. And so I'm just so grateful to you, Dr. Michelle, for really connecting the dots, because we might look at something as random. And I say this all the time. A miracle is only a miracle if you acknowledge it as a miracle. If
Mm,
not, it's just a random act. And so it's always a reminder. Every time I'm with you, it's a reminder that it is important to acknowledge the things that are happening in our life so that we can do something about it, either celebrate it or release them. Does that make
yeah,
sense?
absolutely. Learn from them and release them, just like you've been saying. Absolutely, exactly. And so thank you, Lily. It's so wonderful
Thank
to be
you.
back in the classroom for what
Yes.
you do. It's always wonderful when we get to connect, and I'm grateful to you as well.
Thank you. And I the same as you. Well, I'm so excited for 2024 to see how what's going to reveal for itself. And I'm looking forward to being alongside with you during that as
Mm,
well.
me too.
So
Captain.
thank you. And thank you all for watching today. Watch tomorrow and the next day and all the for the rest of the year. Take the time to pick a topic that is important to you. Start working on it and release it. Like Dr. Michelle says, it's that simple. It's just that simple. So thank you so much, Dr. Michelle. And I am looking forward to our next conversation. And please remember, we'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott, Dr. Michelle LaMasa-Dawson, wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Good job. That's the best ever of this year.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any